never thought silence could be so loud. The turkey sat in the center of my dining table, golden brown and perfect. I'd basted it every 20 minutes for 4 hours, just like Robert taught me. The cranberry sauce glistened in my grandmother's crystal bowl, the one I only brought out for Christmas. Green bean casserole, mashed potatoes with real butter and cream, homemade rolls still warm under a linen cloth. The good china, the silver Robert's mother left me, even the cloth napkins I'd ironed that morning until my fingers ached. Everything was perfect. Everything except the empty chairs. I glanced at the clock above the fireplace, 7:47 p.m. Dinner was supposed to start at 6. I'd texted Jason 3 times, called twice. The calls went straight to voicemail, that generic robot voice telling me the person I was trying to reach was unavailable. He's just running late, I told myself, adjusting a fork that didn't need adjusting. Traffic. You know how Christmas Eve traffic is. Except it wasn't Christmas Eve anymore. It was Christmas night, and my son hadn't even sent a text. The house smelled like rosemary and butter and all the Christmases Robert and I had shared in this tiny kitchen. 42 years we'd lived here. 42 years of memories pressed into these walls, Jason's height marks on the doorframe, the scuff on the floor from when we brought home that ridiculous Christmas tree that was too tall, the water stain on the ceiling from the pipe that burst the winter Robert got pneumonia. I walked to the window, parted the curtain. The street was dark except for old Mr. Henderson's inflatable Santa, sagging slightly in his front yard. No headlights, no car pulling into my driveway. My phone sat silent on the counter. 8:03 p.m. I poured myself a glass of wine, the cheap kind, because that's what my budget allowed now. Robert's life insurance had covered the funeral and not much else. His pension died with him. I was living on Social Security and the tiny savings we'd managed to scrape together, and every month felt like walking a tightrope over a pit I couldn't see the bottom of. But tonight wasn't supposed to be about money. Tonight was supposed to be about family. I picked up my phone, my hands shaking slightly. One more text, just one more. Jason, honey, dinner's ready whenever you get here. I made your favorite pie. Love you. I hit send and watched the message turn blue. Delivered. Read. He'd read it. My chest tightened. That meant he was looking at his phone. That meant he was ignoring me. No, there's an explanation. Maybe Bethany was in labor. No, she wasn't pregnant. Maybe someone was sick. Maybe there was an emergency. I opened Instagram. I never posted anything, but I liked to see photos of my grandchildren, Preston's soccer games, Scarlett's dance recitals. Bethany posted constantly, documenting every moment of their perfect life. The app loaded, and there it was, top of my feed, a photo posted 43 minutes ago. Jason and Bethany stood in front of an enormous Christmas tree, at least 12 feet tall, decorated with what looked like actual crystal ornaments and white lights. Behind them, I could see the Ashford family's grand staircase, the one Victoria always made sure was in every photo. Jason wore a cashmere sweater I'd never seen before. Bethany held a champagne flute, her smile dazzling. Preston and Scarlett were on the floor, surrounded by a mountain of presents wrapped in expensive paper. The caption read, "Perfect Christmas with the family we choose. So grateful for traditions without drama. Blessed. Family. First, Ashford Christmas. Without drama. Without drama." I read it again and again. The words blurred. They hadn't forgotten. They hadn't had an emergency. They'd chosen not to come. Victoria had won. My mother-in-law, no, my consogra, Jason's mother-in-law, had finally succeeded in erasing me. She'd been working on it for years, ever since Jason married her daughter. Little comments about my quaint house, my simple cooking, expensive gifts for Jason and Bethany, trips to Europe I could never afford to match. She'd smiled to my face at the wedding and called me sweet in a tone that made it sound like an insult. And now this. Traditions without drama. As if I was the drama. I set the phone down carefully, afraid I'd throw it. The turkey was getting cold. I walked through the kitchen, through the back door, into the yard. The December air bit at my skin, but I didn't care. I needed to breathe. I needed to not be inside that house with the perfect dinner nobody wanted. Robert's bird feeder hung from the oak tree, the one he'd built the summer before he died. He'd spent weeks on it, measuring and sanding, painting it forest green because he said it would blend with the leaves. After he passed, I couldn't bring myself to take it down, even though I never remembered to fill it with seeds anymore. I touched it now, my fingers tracing the wood he'd touched. "They didn't come, Robert," I whispered. "Our boy didn't come." The feeder swung slightly in the cold wind, and then I heard it, a crack, sharp and final. The bottom panel split open. I stepped back, startled, as something fell into the dead grass, a plastic bag sealed tight. Inside I could see paper, a letter maybe, and something metal. My hands shook as I picked it up. The bag was thick, the kind meant to keep things dry for years. I worked it open, my breath coming fast. A letter, handwritten, Robert's handwriting, and a key. Old brass, rusty at the edges. I unfolded the letter, and even in the darkness, even with my hands shaking and my eyes blurred with tears, I could read the first line. "Dear Meg, if you're reading this, it's because they left you alone." I stood in the backyard for 20 minutes, reading that letter over and over until I'd memorized every word. "Dear Meg, if you're reading this, it's because they left you alone. I knew Victoria's family would try to diminish you when I was gone. I saw how she looked at you at the wedding, like you were something stuck to the bottom of her Prada shoe. What I never told anyone, not even Jason, because God love him, but our boy has a big mouth, is that I invested our savings in land 20 years ago. You remember that summer I said I was helping my cousin Eddie with his roofing business? I lied, mi amor. I'm sorry. But I was buying our insurance policy. The property is called Willowbrook Farm, the old Henderson place on Riverside Road. I bought it for $87,000 in 2005. The family was desperate to sell after old man Henderson died, and nobody wanted a rundown farm that needed work. I paid cash, fixed the deed in your name only, and put it in a safety deposit box at First National Bank. By now, that land is worth millions. I checked the comps before I got sick. The key in this bag opens the main gate. The original lock still works. You were always stronger than they gave you credit for, than you gave yourself credit for. Now prove it. Go claim what's yours. And Meg, don't tell Jason until you're ready. Make them come to you. All my love, always, Robert. P.S. The safety deposit box number is 347. They'll need your ID and this letter. My legs gave out. I sat down hard on the frozen ground, the letter clutched against my chest. Robert had known. He'd known. Victoria would do this. And he'd protected me. Tears came then, hot and fast, but they weren't sad tears anymore. They were something else, something that felt like fury and love and grief, all tangled together in my chest until I couldn't breathe. My husband had bought me a farm. In secret. 20 years ago. I looked down at the key in my palm. It was real. Solid. Cold. This was real. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table with the letter spread in front of me, Robert's reading glasses beside it. I still couldn't throw them away. The turkey sat untouched in the refrigerator. I'd wrapped it in foil sometime around midnight, moving like a ghost through my own house. At 8:47 a.m. on December 26th, I was standing outside First National Bank when the manager unlocked the doors. "Mrs. Sullivan!" Tom Brennan had worked at this bank for 30 years. He'd processed our mortgage, our car loans, every financial thing Robert and I had ever done together. "Merry Christmas! Didn't expect to see you today? I need to access my safety deposit box," I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, steadier than I felt. Tom's smile faltered slightly. "Of course. Do you have your key?" I showed him the letter instead. He read it slowly, his expression shifting from confusion to surprise to something like awe. When he looked up, his eyes were different. "Mrs. Sullivan," he said carefully, "do you know what this property is worth now?" Robert said millions. Robert wasn't exaggerating. Tom gestured for me to follow him. "Come with me." The safety deposit box was long and narrow, tucked in the vault's bottom row. Tom used the bank's key along with mine, and the metal drawer slid open with a whisper. Inside, a manila envelope, thick and official-looking. My hands shook as I opened it. The deed was on top. Legal language I barely understood, but I could read the important parts. Property address, 1247, Riverside Road, Riverside Hills parcel. ID, RH 2847193. Owner, Margaret Ann Sullivan. Purchase. Date, June 14, 2005. Purchase price, $87,000. Beneath the deed was a recent appraisal. Robert must have ordered it before he got too sick. The date was from 3 years ago. Current market value, $3,200,000. $3 million. $3 million. "Mrs. Sullivan?" Tom's voice seemed to come from far away. "Are you all right? Do you need to sit down?" I looked up at him. "Where is Riverside Road?" That's in Riverside Hills, the estate section." He paused. "That's where the Ashford family lives. You know, Victoria Ashford? She's on the community board." Of course she was. The irony hit me like cold water. Robert hadn't just bought me property. He'd bought me property in Victoria's neighborhood, in the place she ruled like a queen. I started laughing. I couldn't help it. Tom looked concerned, but I couldn't stop. "Mrs. Sullivan, I'm fine," I managed. "I'm perfect. Can I get copies of everything in this box?" "Absolutely. Give me 10 minutes." The drive to Willowbrook Farm took 23 minutes. I knew the area. I'd driven past it 100 times when Jason and Bethany first moved to Riverside Hills. Their house was modest by the neighborhood standards, a 3-bedroom colonial that Victoria had called a starter home with obvious distaste. But it was still more than I could ever afford. Riverside Road wound through the nicest part of town. Estates with circular driveways, homes with names on brass plaques, lawns maintained by professional services. I felt out of place in my 15-year-old Honda, my clearance rack coat from Kohl's. And then I saw it. The number 1247 on a stone pillar, barely visible through overgrown ivy. Behind it, an old wrought iron gate, rusted but still standing. And beyond the gate, my breath caught. The farmhouse was beautiful. Even neglected, even with peeling paint and shutters hanging crooked, I could see what it had been. What it could be again. 2 stories of white clapboard, a wraparound porch, tall windows that must have let in gorgeous light. The property stretched back farther than I could see. 12 acres, according to the deed. There were old oak trees, a stone wall, what looked like a barn in the distance. I got out of the car, the rusty key gripping in my hand. The gate's lock was old, but when I slid the key in, it turned with a heavy click. The gate swung open. I walked up the dirt driveway, my heart pounding. The house was even bigger up close. The porch steps were solid. Robert must have fixed them before he got sick. I could see his work in the little details. A replaced board here, a reinforced railing there. He'd been taking care of this place. For me. All those weekends he said he was helping Eddie. He'd been here. I turned around, looking back down the driveway toward the road, and that's when I saw it. Through the bare winter trees across the valley, maybe half a mile away, another estate, enormous, modern, with a 4-car garage and what looked like a pool house. I knew that house. I'd seen it in Bethany's Instagram photos 100 times. The Ashford estate, Victoria's house. From where I stood on my porch, I could practically see into her backyard. I started laughing again, but this time it was different. This time it felt like power. "Robert, you brilliant, sneaky man." I pulled out my phone. For a moment I considered calling Jason, texting him, telling him what I'd found. But then I remembered Robert's words. "Don't tell Jason until you're ready. Make them come to you." I put my phone away. They didn't need to know. Not yet. Not until I decided what I was going to do with the gift my husband had left me. The gift that put me right in the middle of Victoria Ashford's perfect world. I sat down on the porch steps of my $3 million farmhouse and smiled. For the first time in 2 years, I wasn't invisible anymore. I put my house on Maple Street up for sale on January 3rd. The realtor, a young woman named Stephanie with a sleek ponytail and cold professionalism, walked through my home with a critical eye, making notes on her tablet. "It needs work," she said, not unkindly. "The kitchen's dated, the bathroom needs updating. But the bones are good. In this market, I'd say $185,000, maybe $195,000 if we're lucky." I nodded. $200,000 would have sounded like a fortune to me 3 weeks ago. Now it sounded like pocket change. "Listed at $179,000, I said. "I want it gone fast." Stephanie's eyes widened. "Mrs. Sullivan, you could get more if you're patient." "I don't want to be patient. I want it sold." It sold in 11 days, cash offer. A young couple with a baby on the way who loved the neighborhood, loved the memories pressed into the walls. I signed the papers in Tom Brennan's office and walked out with a check that would cover the renovations at Willowbrook. I didn't tell Jason I was selling. I didn't tell him anything. He texted me once on December 27th. "Hey Mom, sorry we missed Christmas. Things got crazy. We'll make it up to you soon." I'd stared at that text for 10 minutes. Things got crazy. Not an explanation, not an apology, just a vague excuse and a vague promise. I didn't respond. Instead, I canceled my cell phone plan and got a new number. Kept the old phone in a drawer, watching the messages pile up. 4 texts from Jason over 2 weeks, each one more confused than the last. "Mom, you okay? Mom, call me back. Getting worried. Please respond." Did I do something wrong? The last one almost broke me. Almost. But then I'd remember that Instagram post, "Perfect Christmas without drama." And I'd close the drawer. By March, Willowbrook Farm was unrecognizable. I'd hired a contractor named Miguel who'd looked at the house with the kind of reverence it deserved. "This is a 1890 Victorian farmhouse," he'd said, running his hand along the original wood paneling. "They don't make them like this anymore. We restore this right, you'll have something special." We restored it right. The exterior got fresh white paint, historically accurate. The shutters were repaired and painted deep green, Robert's favorite color. The porch was reinforced and expanded with new railing that matched the original style. Inside, we kept every original detail we could. The hardwood floors, the crown molding, the pocket doors between the parlor and dining room. But we updated where it mattered. New kitchen with commercial-grade appliances. 4 bathrooms, all with heated floors and vintage-style fixtures. The master bedroom, my bedroom, had a clawfoot tub and windows that looked out over the entire property. I found an interior designer at a coffee shop in town. Her name was Leanne, and she was probably 40, with bright red glasses and an enthusiasm that was infectious. "What's your vision?" she'd asked. "I want it to feel like coming home to a grandmother you never knew you had. Warm but elegant, comfortable but special." Leanne had grinned. "I can work with that." She filled the house with antiques from local estate sales, quilts draped over leather chairs, vintage botanical prints on the walls, Persian rugs worn soft with age. Every room had fresh flowers. Every bathroom had plush towels and fancy soaps. The kitchen had a farmhouse table that could seat 12. By April, I'd applied for the permits to run a bed and breakfast. By May, I'd hired staff. A young couple, Maria and David, who lived in the converted barn apartment and helped with cooking and maintenance. By June, I'd launched the website, Willowbrook B&B, a historic retreat in Riverside Hills. The first guest arrived on June 15th. I barely recognized myself in the mirror anymore. The woman staring back at me had her hair professionally colored, not to hide the gray, but to enhance it, turning it into a sophisticated silver that Leanne said made me look timeless. I'd lost 15 pounds without trying, mostly from the physical work of renovation and the fact that I was too busy to stress eat. I wore clothes that actually fit, not expensive, but tailored. Linen pants and cashmere cardigans, simple dresses that made me feel put together. I'd even started wearing makeup again, just a little, enough to look polished. But the biggest change wasn't physical. I stood differently, spoke differently. When guests checked in, I looked them in the eye and smiled with real confidence. "Welcome to Willowbrook," I'd say. "Let me show you to your room." The B&B filled up fast. Couples celebrating anniversaries, families visiting for graduations at the nearby college, business travelers who wanted something nicer than a hotel. They loved the house, loved the property, loved the breakfasts Maria made, fresh baked croissants, local honey, eggs from our chickens. Our chickens. I had chickens now. 6 of them, clucking around the coop David had built behind the barn. I'd made friends, too. Real friends, not just acquaintances from church who pitied the poor widow. Leanne invited me to her book club. Miguel's wife, Rosa, taught me to make proper tamales. The woman who owned the flower shop in town, Catherine, in her 70s, sharp as a tack, started having coffee with me every Tuesday morning. They didn't know about Jason, about Victoria, about the Christmas I'd spent alone. To them, I was just Margaret, the woman who'd bought the old Henderson place and turned it into something magical. And slowly, I started believing that's who I was. I first heard Victoria's name again in late July. Catherine and I were having coffee on the porch. The guests had checked out early and the house was quiet. She was telling me about the Riverside Hills Community Foundation Gala coming up in September. "It's the social event of the season," she said, rolling her eyes slightly. "Very fancy, very exclusive. Victoria Ashford runs it like a military operation." My hand tightened on my coffee cup. "Victoria Ashford," I repeated carefully. "Oh, you'll meet her eventually. She thinks she owns this town." Catherine leaned in conspiratorially. "Between you and me, she's a nightmare. But her husband has money, so everyone tolerates her. She lives in that monstrosity across the valley. You can probably see it from your upstairs windows." "I've noticed it," I said softly. "Well, she's been asking about you apparently. Heard there was a new B&B and wanted to know who bought the Henderson place. Probably worried you'll steal her thunder." Catherine laughed. "Lord knows this town could use some fresh blood." Victoria was asking about me, but she didn't know it was me. The thought sent a thrill down my spine. I was in the garden in early August, cutting roses for the guest rooms, when my old cell phone rang. I'd kept it charged, kept it in the kitchen drawer. Some part of me, some small, stubborn part, still hoped Jason would really try to reach me. Not just texts. A real effort. I wiped my hands on my apron and answered, "Mom?" Jason's voice was frantic. "Mom, oh my God, where have you been? I've been trying to reach you for months. I went by the house. There are strangers living there. They said you sold it. Mom, what's going on?" I closed my eyes. "Make them come to you," Robert had written. "I'm fine, Jason," I said. My voice was calm, steady. "Fine." "Mom, you disappeared. You sold the house. Where are you living? Are you okay? Do you need money?" Do I need money? I almost laughed. "I'm perfectly fine," I said. "I have everything I need." "Then why haven't you been answering? We've been worried sick." "We?" I interrupted. "You mean you and Bethany?" "The same you and Bethany who spent Christmas at Victoria's house while I sat alone with a turkey nobody ate." Silence. "Mom, that's what this is about." "This isn't about anything, Jason. I'm just living my life." "Where are you? Let me come see you. We need to talk." I looked around my beautiful kitchen, at the flowers on the counter, at the life I'd built without him. "I'm not ready for that yet," I said quietly. "Not ready?" "Mom, you're scaring me." "I'll call you when I'm ready. Goodbye, Jason." I hung up, and then I turned off the old phone and put it back in the drawer. Jason found me in September. Later, he told me how it happened, how the credit card statements started piling up, how the private school tuition for Preston and Scarlett came due, $32,000 a year for both kids. How Bethany's boutique, the one Victoria had bankrolled 2 years ago, was hemorrhaging money. How Victoria had cut them off. It happened at her Labor Day party, the annual Ashford Estate event that Bethany had posted about religiously every year. Apparently, Jason had made a comment about Victoria's controlling behavior. Something about how she expected them to be available every weekend, how she scheduled their lives like they were her personal assistants. Victoria, in front of 50 guests, had smiled sweetly and said, "Well, if you don't appreciate everything I do for you, perhaps you should learn to manage on your own." By the next morning, the credit card she'd given them, the one with no limit that covered their groceries, gas, the kids' activities, was canceled. The monthly allowance she'd been depositing into their account stopped. The lake house timeshare she'd been paying for, revoked. Bethany's boutique rent, which Victoria had quietly been covering when the business ran short, due in full. Jason's salary as a marketing coordinator sounded impressive until you tried to live on it in Riverside Hills. Their mortgage alone was $4,200 a month. They were drowning, and the only person Jason could think to turn to was the mother he'd abandoned on Christmas. He hired a private investigator, spent money they didn't have, to track down where I'd gone. The investigator found the sale records for the Maple Street house, found my new business license, found Willowbrook. Jason told me all of this later, his voice thick with shame. But in the moment, on that Saturday afternoon in mid-September, when his BMW pulled up my driveway, all I saw was the shock on his face. I was on the porch with guests, a lovely couple from Boston celebrating their 30th anniversary. We were having lemonade and discussing the best hiking trails in the area when I heard the car, a silver BMW. Expensive, but not new. It parked awkwardly near the gate, as if the driver couldn't quite believe where he was. Jason stepped out first. My son. My baby boy who'd grown into a man I barely recognized anymore. He was thinner than I remembered, his face drawn with stress. He wore jeans and a polo shirt, casual, but I could see the designer label from where I sat. Bethany emerged from the passenger side. Her hair was in a messy ponytail, her yoga pants and oversized sweater a far cry from the polished outfits she usually wore in photos. She looked tired, scared. They both stood there, staring at my house like they'd stumbled into an alternate dimension. I excused myself from my guests. "I'm so sorry, unexpected visitors," and walked down the porch steps. Jason's eyes locked on mine. "Mom?" His voice cracked. What? What is this place?" "This is Willowbrook Farm," I said calmly. "My home." "Can I help you?" The formality in my tone made him flinch. "Your home?" Bethany looked around wildly. "Margaret, this is a mansion. How did you—" "Your father bought it 20 years ago," I said simply. "I inherited it when he died. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have guests." "Mom, wait." Jason stepped forward, his hands raised like he was approaching a skittish animal. "Please, we need to talk. I know I screwed up. I know Christmas was. God, Mom, I'm so sorry. I've been trying to reach you for months." "I got your messages." "Then why didn't you answer?" I looked at him, really looked at him. At 35 years old, my son looked like a little boy again, lost and confused and desperate for his mother to fix everything. But I wasn't the same mother he'd left sitting alone on Christmas. "Because I wasn't ready," I said. "And I'm still not sure I am." "Please." Bethany's voice was small. She'd started crying, tears running down her makeup-free face. "Please, Margaret. I know we don't deserve it, but we need help." I brought them inside, not as family, as guests. I showed them the parlor, the dining room, the kitchen with its farmhouse table and vintage light fixtures. I showed them the guest rooms upstairs, each one decorated with care, each one booked solid through October. I watched their faces as they took it all in, the obvious expense, the quality, the taste. This wasn't some run-down property. This was worth millions, and they knew it. We sat in the sunroom. My favorite room, all windows and light, overlooking the garden I'd planted in the spring. Coffee? Tea? I asked politely. Mom, stop. Jason's voice broke. Stop treating us like strangers. Aren't you? I kept my voice level. You spent Christmas with Victoria. You ignored my calls, my texts. When I finally sold my house and moved, you didn't even notice for 2 months. So tell me, Jason, what exactly are we to each other? He buried his face in his hands. Bethany spoke instead, her voice shaking. It was my fault, all of it, my mother. She told us you wanted to be alone. She said you'd told her you needed space to grieve, that having us there would be too painful. We believed her. I went very still. Victoria told you I didn't want you there? Yes. She showed Jason a text, supposedly from you, saying you needed a quiet Christmas. We thought we were respecting your wishes. A text. Victoria had faked a text from me. The rage that rose in my chest was cold and sharp. And you didn't think to call me directly? To confirm? Jason looked up, his eyes red. I tried. You didn't answer. I thought you really did want space. And then Mom, Victoria, she kept saying how important family traditions were, how the kids needed stability, how her Christmas was already planned. He trailed off. I took the easy way out. I chose comfort over you, and I've regretted it every single day since. The silence stretched between us. Why are you here now? I asked quietly. Why track me down after 9 months? Bethany and Jason exchanged a look. Victoria cut us off, Jason admitted. Financially. We're in trouble, Mom. Real trouble. I know I have no right to ask, but you need money. I finished for him. He winced. I need my mother, the money. That's not why I'm here. I mean, yes, we're drowning, but Mom, I would have come anyway. I should have come months ago. I was just too ashamed. I studied my son's face, the dark circles under his eyes, the genuine anguish there. He was sorry. I could see that. But sorry didn't erase Christmas, didn't erase 9 months of silence. I forgive you, I said finally. Relief flooded his features. But, I continued, my voice firm, things will never be the way they were. You don't get to treat me like I'm disposable when it's convenient, and then come running back when you need something. I'm done being invisible. You're not invisible, Jason whispered. Mom, you're incredible. Look at this place. Look at what you built. I built it without you. The words hung in the air, sharp and true. And I'm proud of that. I'm proud of who I've become. So if you want to be part of my life again, it's on my terms. No more last-minute cancellations. No more choosing Victoria over me. No more taking me for granted. Anything, Jason said. I'll do anything. I nodded slowly. There's a gala next weekend, the Riverside Hills Community Foundation event. I've been invited as a new business owner in the community. Your mother-in-law is running it. Bethany went pale. The gala. Oh God, she's been planning it for months. I'm going, I said calmly, and I think it's time Victoria Ashford met the new Margaret Sullivan, don't you? Jason stared at me, and then for the first time since he'd arrived, he smiled. It was a small smile, tinged with something like awe. Mom, he said, you're terrifying. Good, I replied. It's about time. The Riverside Hills Community Foundation Gala was held at the Grandview Estate, a historic venue with marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and gardens that looked like something out of a wedding magazine. I arrived at 7:30, fashionably late. Leanne had taken me shopping, not to the department stores I usually haunted with their clearance racks and coupons, but to a boutique downtown where the dresses didn't have price tags because, if you have to ask, you can't afford it. Except I could afford it now. The dress was midnight blue silk, simple but elegant, with a neckline that was sophisticated without being too revealing. It moved like water when I walked. Leanne had insisted on professional hair and makeup. My silver hair swept up in a soft chignon, my makeup subtle but polished. When I looked in the mirror before leaving Willowbrook, I barely recognized myself. I looked like I belonged. Catherine met me at the entrance, elegant in black lace. "Margaret, you look stunning. Ready to make your society debut?" "As ready as I'll ever be." She squeezed my hand. "Just remember, half these people are insufferable social climbers, and the other half are lovely. Stick with me, and you'll be fine." We walked through the main doors, and I felt every eye turn toward us. The ballroom was magnificent. At least 200 people in cocktail attire, servers circulating with champagne and hors d'oeuvres, a string quartet playing in the corner. The walls were decorated with information about the Foundation's charitable work, scholarships for local students, support for the arts, community development projects. And there, holding court in the center of the room, was Victoria Ashford. She wore white, always a risky choice, but she pulled it off. Her dress was designer, her jewelry genuine, her hair a perfect blonde bob. She was laughing with a group of well-dressed couples, her hand on Richard's arm, every inch the Queen of Riverside Hills. She hadn't seen me yet. "Margaret Sullivan!" a voice called out. I turned to see the mayor, a friendly man in his 60s named Thomas Chen. I'd met him when I applied for my business permits. "So glad you could make it. How's the B&B doing?" "Wonderfully, thank you. Booked solid through the holidays." "That's fantastic. You know, you've really brought something special to our community." He turned to the couple beside him. "Jim, Sarah, have you met Margaret? She's the one who restored the old Henderson place, turned it into the most charming bed and breakfast." More introductions followed. People wanted to know about Willowbrook, about the restoration, about my plans. They were warm, genuinely interested. Several mentioned they'd been meaning to book a stay. I was so absorbed in conversation that I didn't notice Victoria approaching until she was right beside me. "Margaret?" Her voice cut through the chatter like a knife through silk. I turned slowly, letting her see me fully, letting her take in the dress, the jewelry, the confidence. "Victoria," I said pleasantly, "what a lovely event. You've outdone yourself." Her face had gone pale beneath her expertly applied makeup. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. "What are you doing here?" The question came out strangled, barely polite. "I was invited," I said simply. "I'm a business owner in Riverside Hills now. Didn't you know?" "Business owner?" She looked around wildly, as if searching for an explanation. "What business? Where?" "Willowbrook Farm. Perhaps you've heard of it? It's the bed and breakfast on Riverside Road." I smiled. "Actually, I think we're neighbors. I can see your estate from my upstairs windows." The color that had drained from her face came rushing back, angry red splotches on her cheeks. "That's impossible. The Henderson place was bought by—" She stopped. "That was you? My late husband bought it 20 years ago, as an investment. Quite a good one, as it turns out." Mayor Chen, oblivious to the tension, beamed. "Margaret's being modest. The restoration is absolutely stunning. You should see it, Victoria. She's turned that old farm into something really special." Victoria's jaw tightened. "I'm sure it's quaint." The word hung in the air, the same word she'd always used to describe everything about my life. My house, my cooking, my clothes. Quaint. "You should visit sometime," I said sweetly. "I'd be happy to give you a tour, though I'm afraid we're fully booked for the next 3 months, so you'd have to make an appointment." Her eyes narrowed to slits. For the next hour, I watched Victoria unravel. She followed me from group to group, interrupting conversations, making pointed comments. When someone praised the B&B, she'd mention how difficult it must be to run a business at her age. When people asked about the property, she'd remind them it had been abandoned for decades and hint at foundation problems, pest issues. But the community had already made up their minds about me, and they were starting to see through Victoria. "You know, Victoria," Catherine said at one point, her voice cool, "you seem awfully interested in Margaret's property. Are you thinking of opening a competing B&B?" Victoria's laugh was shrill. "Hardly. I just think people should know what they're getting into." That property has history. Wonderful history, interrupted a woman named Patricia, who owned an art gallery in town. My grandparents knew the Hendersons. That farm has excellent bones. What Margaret's done with it is remarkable. Victoria's mask was cracking. By 9 o'clock, it shattered completely. She'd had too much champagne. I could see it in her movements, slightly uncoordinated, her voice pitched higher than usual. She cornered me near the dessert table, her face flushed with rage and alcohol. "How dare you?" she hissed, loud enough that people nearby turned to look. "How dare you show up here in my town, acting like you belong? You're nobody. You're a widow from Maple Street with a high school education and clearance rack clothes. Victoria." Richard appeared at her elbow, his face tight with embarrassment. "That's enough." "No." She shook him off. "Everyone needs to know the truth. This woman," she pointed at me, her fingers shaking, "she's been manipulating everyone. She turned my own daughter against me. She turned Jason against me. And now she's trying to steal my position in this community." "Your position?" I kept my voice quiet, calm. "Victoria, I'm not trying to steal anything. I'm just living my life." "Living off your dead husband's money. Money he probably stole." "Mother!" Bethany's voice rang out across the ballroom. The music had stopped. Everyone was staring. Bethany pushed through the crowd, Jason right behind her. My daughter-in-law's face was red, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Stop it," Bethany said, her voice shaking. "Just stop. Margaret didn't manipulate anyone. You did. You lied to us about Christmas. You told us she wanted to be alone, and she didn't. You faked a text from her. You've been controlling our lives for years, and I'm done. We're done." Victoria staggered back as if she'd been slapped. "Bethany, what are you—" "I'm choosing Margaret," Bethany said firmly. "I'm choosing the woman who's never been anything but kind to me, even after we abandoned her, even after we chose you over her. She forgave us. You would never have forgiven anyone." The silence in the ballroom was deafening. Victoria looked around wildly, at the shocked faces, at Richard's mortified expression, at the mayor and the community leaders all watching her public meltdown. "This is ridiculous," she said, but her voice had lost its power. "All of you, you're all— I think you should leave, Victoria." Mayor Chen's voice was quiet but firm. "Before you say something else, you'll regret." Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. Richard took her arm gently. "Come on, let's go home." She let him lead her toward the exit, but at the door she turned back one last time. Her eyes found mine across the crowded room. The look she gave me was pure hatred, and then she was gone. The quartet started playing again. Conversations resumed, but the damage was done. Victoria Ashford, the queen of Riverside Hills, had shown everyone exactly who she really was. Catherine appeared at my elbow with fresh champagne. "Well," she said dryly, "that was quite the show." I accepted the glass, my hands shaking slightly with adrenaline. I didn't want it to go like that. Maybe not, but it needed to happen. She clinked her glass against mine. "Welcome to Riverside Hills, Margaret. Something tells me you're going to fit in just fine." Jason and Bethany approached tentatively. Bethany's makeup was ruined from crying, but she looked lighter somehow, unburdened. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I should have said that months ago, years ago." I set down my champagne and pulled her into a hug. "You said it now," I murmured. "That's what matters." When I pulled back, Jason was watching me with something like wonder in his eyes. "You didn't even fight back," he said. "You just let her destroy herself." I smiled. "Your father taught me that, actually. He always said the best revenge is being so happy that other people's negativity can't touch you. Took me a while to understand what he meant. He'd be proud of you, Mom." "I know," I said softly. "I finally know." 3 weeks after the gala, Jason showed up at Willowbrook on a Tuesday morning with a truck full of boxes. I was in the garden, cutting dahlias for the breakfast table, when I heard the gravel crunch under tires. Maria had already put out fresh coffee and muffins for the guests, a retired couple from Philadelphia who were spending the week hiking and antiquing. "Mom?" Jason called from the driveway. "Can I borrow your barn for a few hours?" I walked around the house, wiping dirt from my hands. "What's in the boxes?" "Our stuff. We're moving." He looked exhausted but determined. "We put the house on the market yesterday. Can't afford it anymore, and honestly, we don't want to. We're renting a 2-bedroom in town until we figure things out." Bethany emerged from the passenger side, wearing jeans and a ponytail, no makeup. She looked younger, happier. "The kids are excited," she said. "They'll be in public school starting next week. Preston's already made friends with the boy next door." I set down my garden shears. "How are you managing, financially?" Jason rubbed the back of his neck. "It's tight, really tight. I picked up a second job doing freelance marketing. Bethany's working at the flower shop. Catherine hired her." "And we're okay," Bethany added quickly. We're better. It turns out money doesn't buy happiness. It just buys expensive problems." I smiled. "Your mother must be thrilled." Their faces darkened. "We haven't spoken to her since the gala," Jason said quietly. "She's tried calling, texting. She even showed up at our old house before we moved. Security had to escort her off the property." "She's not well, Margaret," Bethany said, her voice sad. "She's always been controlling, but this is different. She's obsessed. Dad's threatened to leave if she doesn't get help." A small, petty part of me felt satisfaction at that, but mostly, I just felt tired. "That's not your responsibility to fix," I said gently. "You can't set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm." Jason looked at me for a long moment. "You've changed, Mom. Not just the house and the business. You've changed." "I had to," I said simply. "I was disappearing, becoming invisible. Your father's gift, this place, it gave me a chance to remember who I was, or maybe to discover who I could be." "Can we help?" Jason asked suddenly. "With the B&B? I know we messed up. I know we have a lot to make up for, but I want to be part of your life again, the real way, not the obligatory Sunday dinner way." I considered this. I could use help with the website, marketing, and Maria could use an extra hand on busy weekends. "I'll do it," he said immediately. "Whatever you need." "Not whatever I need," I corrected gently. "What works for both of us, with boundaries, real boundaries." He nodded, understanding. "Deal." Dean Victoria's fall from grace was swift and complete. I heard about it through Catherine, who heard it from everyone. Victoria had tried to host her annual autumn luncheon. Only 12 women showed up instead of the usual 40. She'd attempted to rejoin the country club board and been politely declined. Her Christmas party invitation, usually the most coveted in Riverside Hills, was declined by more than half the guest list. The whispers followed her everywhere. "Did you hear what she said to Margaret Sullivan? Did you see how she acted at the gala?" I always knew she was difficult, but this. Richard did leave her, eventually. Not permanently, but he moved into their lake house temporarily and made it clear things needed to change. Victoria was seeing a therapist now, according to Bethany. Whether it would help remained to be seen. I felt something for her, not quite pity, not quite sympathy, maybe just recognition. She'd built her entire identity on control and status, and when those crumbled, she had nothing left. I'd almost become that, almost built my entire life around being needed, being the perfect mother, the perfect widow, the perfect invisible woman. Robert had saved me from that fate. Christmas came again. 1 year and 2 days since I'd sat alone at that table, since I'd found the letter in the bird feeder, since my entire life had changed. This time, my dining room was full. Jason and Bethany and the kids, of course. But also Catherine and her husband, Leanne and her wife, Miguel and Rosa and their 3 daughters, Maria and David, Tom from the bank and his partner. 18 people crowded around my farmhouse table, laughing and talking and passing dishes family style. Preston and Scarlett helped me in the kitchen, learning to baste the turkey the way their grandfather had taught me. They asked questions about Robert, what he was like, what he would think of the farm, whether he'd be proud. He'd be so proud, I told them, brushing Scarlett's hair back from her face. Of all of us. After dinner, after the dishes were cleared and the pie was served, Jason pulled me aside onto the porch. The December air was cold, but the sky was clear, full of stars. "Thank you, Mom," he said quietly, "for giving me another chance, for forgiving me." "You're my son," I said simply. "I'll always love you." But love doesn't mean accepting bad treatment. It took me too long to learn that. "I'm trying to teach Preston and Scarlett that," he said. "About boundaries, about treating people with respect, especially the people who love you. I don't want them to grow up thinking it's okay to take people for granted just because they'll always be there." I squeezed his hand. "You're a good father, Jason. Better than you think." Through the window, I could see Bethany helping Scarlett with a puzzle. Catherine was telling a story that had Miguel laughing so hard he had tears in his eyes. Leanne was showing Rosa photos on her phone. This was family. Not perfect, not without complication or history or hurt, but real, chosen, built on respect and boundaries and genuine love. I'm writing this story now, months later, in the sunroom at Willowbrook. The B&B is thriving. We've been featured in 3 magazines and a travel blog. I've hired 2 more staff members. I'm even considering expanding, maybe converting the old barn into an event space for weddings. Jason works for me part-time now, handling all the marketing and social media. He's good at it. The kids visit every weekend, helping in the garden, gathering eggs from the chickens. Bethany and I have become friends, real friends, not just in-laws forced together by obligation. She's finding herself too, separate from her mother's expectations. Victoria? I saw her once, at the grocery store in town. She looked smaller somehow, older. She saw me, our eyes met, and for a moment I thought she might say something, but she just turned and walked away. I don't hate her. I don't even feel satisfaction at her downfall anymore. I just feel free. Free from needing her approval, her acceptance, her acknowledgement that I matter. Because I already know I matter. I matter to myself. If you're reading this, and I hope you are, maybe you see yourself in my story. Maybe you're the one sitting at the empty table, waiting for people who won't come. Maybe you're the one being diminished, dismissed, treated like you're invisible. I want you to know something. You're not invisible. You're just surrounded by people who've forgotten how to see. And the beautiful, terrifying truth is this: you don't need them to see you. You don't need their validation or their presence or their crumbs of affection. You need to see yourself. When Robert left me that letter, that property, that key, he wasn't just giving me financial security. He was giving me permission. Permission to choose myself. Permission to demand better. Permission to walk away from people who didn't value me and build a life with people who did. The sweetest revenge isn't screaming or fighting or proving someone wrong. It's becoming so genuinely happy, so completely at peace, that their negativity can't touch you anymore. It's living so fully in your own worth that you don't need anyone else to validate it. Victoria wanted to erase me. She wanted me to disappear, to fade into the background of her perfect family portrait. Instead, I became the most visible version of myself I'd ever been. Not because I fought for it, but because I finally believed I deserved it. This is my story. I'm Margaret Sullivan, and this is what happened when my family abandoned me on Christmas. When I found out my dead husband had left me millions. When I stopped being invisible. I sent this to Legacy Stories because I want other women who feel unseen, undervalued, forgotten, to know that it's never too late. It's never too late to choose yourself. It's never too late to demand respect. It's never too late to build the life you deserve, even if you have to build it alone. Especially if you have to build it alone. Because sometimes the greatest love story isn't about finding someone else. It's about finding yourself. Merry Christmas and happy new beginnings.